Hello, Calliope Mag. This is Dan Barrett from Blackwing, and doing this interview at the request of Barbara, who is awesome, as always. You can see I'm at work. This is my work clothing. It's not really cool music clothing, but it is what I wear to work. It makes me feel like I should work to dress like this, so I do. You can also see this is behind me. This is my new office. I moved from my old office to my new office, so this is where everything is. This is where we record. You can see recording equipment and stuff sort of laid on the back, and of course that's my comic book collection over there, and whiteboard and stuff like that. So let's answer some Blackwing questions. How did Blackwing start? Why is it a separate project from Giles Corey? What are the main differences between Blackwing and your previous projects, both musically and conceptually? I got the idea to do an electronic-only EP as part of the Enemies List kind of Christmas album release thing that we were doing, so where you just kind of put out this free music. Really, I was just looking to learn a little bit more about electronic instruments and synths and mostly digital stuff. I don't really have like a collection of cool old synths or anything that I'm using. This is all just via the computer. It's just something I didn't know a whole lot about, but that I used a lot of synths on projects like Have a Nice Life, and I used some in Giles Corey, and so I wanted to be able to do it a little better, and so I thought, what better way than to kind of mess around with doing a synth-only album. And so that kind of experimental kind of EP, I really enjoyed doing it, and it was kind of fast and enjoyable and sort of felt very improvisational and new. And so I just said, I'm going to turn it into a project, because why not? Could have done it as Giles Corey, but I just felt it was too different. I wanted it to feel totally new. I didn't want to feel like I had to address in any way the previous Giles Corey material I had put out. I didn't want to feel like it needed to reference that or needed to be like that in any way. I just wanted it to be totally different, clean slate, because as much as I try to come at everything completely clean and completely new, but you can never really forget the stuff that came before. And besides, I had Giles Corey material that I'm working on, and it's very different. Giles Corey is really all acoustic stuff, and this was just totally the opposite. So in a lot of ways they're connected. Obviously they're both solo projects. They share, obviously, my aesthetic sense and my kind of melodic constructions, and in a lot of ways Blackwing songs are very similar to Giles Corey songs, but they're different enough, and I wanted them to be very separate. So that's why they're separate projects. What are your biggest influences for Blackwing? When I decided to do Blackwing, I really wanted it to be kind of a chillwave album, which was kind of chillwave was kind of already kind of peaked, and it was sort of coming down on the other side of it when I started the project, which I kind of liked. I really like bands like Washed Out and stuff like that. I just really like the sound of it, and to me, they're very kind of summer records. It was summer when I decided to do the project, and so I was just like, you know what? I'm going to take that thing that I really like, and just put it through my own lens and just see what it would sound like. That seems like it would be cool. So I said it was a depressive chillwave album, sort of tongue-in-cheek. But at the same time, I was just curious what would come out. I didn't know if it would just sound exactly like Have a Nice Life without the guitar parts, or what it would sound like. It was kind of interesting that way. All the stuff that I do gets really influenced by bands like New Order and sort of 80s new wave bands, and so obviously that's in there as well. All right, next question. I imagine that producing Blackwing is fairly different from producing Have a Nice Life and Giles Corey. What were the biggest challenges you came across involving this new project? Yeah, real simple to answer. The two biggest challenges. One is purely technical. I don't know much about synths, and so I don't know much about music really at all. I'm very much kind of an amateur musician that gets to play around with the tools that are provided to me. And so I can't have an idea for what I want something to sound like and then do it. Or at least I couldn't in the beginning. I couldn't, for example, say, I want this to be are arpeggiated at in this particular way, and then actually make that happen. Instead, what I'd kind of do is just mess around with stuff until I found a sound or an idea that I liked, and then use that. And so, in a lot of ways, that's really interesting and really fun. And that's kind of what made the project interesting to me. It's like, oh, you can always discover new things, and you never really know what it's going to sound like. But then the flip side of that is that, it's also kind of a little bit more time-consuming and difficult. Second biggest challenge by far is I'm by myself. Same challenge I have with Giles Corey. Have a Nice Life, I have the honor of doing that band with my friend Tim. Tim is incredibly knowledgeable. He knows a ton about music. He knows a ton about music theory. He thinks of things that I would never think of. And a lot of times what he'll add pieces to songs that I actually don't like, but then over the course of an hour listening to it, they'll become my favorite thing in the song. I love that. And that's what makes Have a Nice Life really, really cool. Most of the stuff people like about Have a Nice Life comes from Tim. So when I'm writing songs without him, obviously I have the freedom to do whatever I want. I don't have to ask anybody. I can just do whatever. But that's also a challenge because I don't have another person's input to kind of push me past my boundaries. Okay, what are some goals and plans for Black Wing? I would like the project to do well enough that it seems like I should do another album. That would definitely be a goal. I don't know if there's another Black Wing album. It seems like there would be because I enjoyed making this one. But partially it's going to be, how does it do and what do people think of it? I don't really care how it gets reviewed because I like it. But, if it does really well, I'll be more likely to want to put time into it, basically. So that would be cool. I would love to do live sets of Black Wing. I really would. That's a big goal for me. I don't really know how to make that happen. I don't want to just bring my laptop and then hit play. I have some ideas for what it would be like, but I don't exactly know how to put that in place or where I'm going to find the time to do that. And so that's a goal, but I don't know if it's going to happen. So those are kind of my goals. You maintain a nice relationship with your fans and actually ask for their help and feedback every now and then. How much do they actually contribute? How much do they play a part in your music? Yeah, it's interesting. I try as much as possible not to let anybody influence my music. I try to make it so that it's just purely what I want to do in the moment. I make the music that I like and that I want to listen to, and to hell with everyone. That's the goal, but that's never the reality for anybody. I really like putting kind of demos out there. I like putting music out there when we're done with it because I get excited about it, and I really enjoy getting people's feedback to it. For me, it's more about curiosity about how people react than it is about necessarily taking direct feedback. Although sometimes I'll put a song up and I'll say, like, what do you think of this? Mostly those are situations where I feel like something is not quite right, but I'm not totally sure what it is. And you can get a really nice objective opinion from a lot of people if you put it online. So there's a definite part. There's always a part to play between the person that's making something and the people that are engaging with it. Whether it's a TV audience, a director, or a book, the author of a book, and a reader, there's always back and forth there, no matter how much people want to say that there isn't. There always is. So I like that, and I like the fact that the people that like our music are pretty much just people like us. There's really not much difference there, and so it's very easy for me to talk with people. How did the recent changes that took place in your life, marriage, jobs, the label, and your son, impact your music and your view on life? Yeah, it's interesting. All that stuff obviously does affect you, but it's hard to know that when it's happening. You really only get to realize the effect that things have on you looking back on it. Black Wing, for example, deals with some health problems that I had that are now a couple years old. But because they're a couple years old, I can actually look at them and get something out of it. When you're engaged in it, when it's actually happening, it's just what's happening. And it's hard to really reflect on it, or at least it is for me in music. I think the Have a Nice Life songs that we're working on now, which will come out a little bit in the future, for me are really about you know, kind of like my personal relationships, and I think the Giles Corey album that comes out will have a lot to do with having a son and what I think that means. In terms of just impacting my life, obviously life is a lot busier. You know, I have my own business. All this is my own business, so I work for myself, which means I work a lot. But I also take a lot of time off to be with my son. I'm with my son 3 full days out of the week, every single week. That's really important to me. Family is really important to me, and it just means that there's a shrinking pie. There's shrinking amounts of time for me to spend on music. But I'm always going to spend time on music because I feel like it's just something I have to do. And there's something that I get from music that I don't get anywhere else. Some sort of feeling of excitement and self-expression that I just don't get from anything else that I do. And that's very private. It doesn't have to do with my relationships with other people. It's very private. It's also really important to me, and I've thought about this a lot, that my son grow up knowing that I have these interests. For me, the thing that makes life livable is passion for things. It's passion for creating things or engaging with, you know, whatever it is, whatever your passion is. You have passion for other people. Those relationships are extremely important. But, you know, beyond that, in terms of personal development, it's important to have something that you are dedicated to outside of the family. And I want my son to have that. Whatever it is, I want him to have that. So part of this is I want to model that for him and show him that you can have these passions in your life that that provide a level of depth to life that might not be there otherwise. What's the most gratifying thing about making music? What does it mean to you? The reason I make music is there's this moment, and it doesn't always happen, but there's this moment where you're making something, or typically for me, you know, I'll be here at the computer and we're working on a song, and we're recording or we're mixing, and you know, we're sort of playing little bits, and we're going back and forth, and you're just sort of just piece to piece, right? Like just sort of doing these small little pieces. And then there's a moment where you go back and typically what I'll do is I'll put the cursor all the way to the back of the beginning and I'll play it all the way through for the first time. And when I do this, I almost always kind of stand up at pace. And I listen to it and I sort of think about what I feel about it and all that. And there's a moment with some songs where it clicks for the first time. It becomes more than all these pieces we're putting together, but it becomes the thing it's going to be eventually, which is this whole, this kind of emotional sort of totality, or whatever it's going to be. And when that happens, I get an incredible feeling of excitement, just this thrill where the music is kind of hitting for the first time. I'm feeling the impact. I typically get really excited, so I'll start jumping around, or you know, I start punching the air or something. I feel that feeling, and that's the reason that I play music. It's just so fulfilling to me in a way that a lot of other stuff, you know, other things that I do are incredibly fulfilling, but it's different, and I just love that feeling. And so that's why I make music, and why I couldn't, for example, play in a cover band or something. It just wouldn't be the same. What are your views on sharing music online, the growth of Bandcamp, illegal downloading, etc.? Do you think it's detrimental to bands in the long run? No, I don't think it's detrimental. You know, music is inherent in human society. There's always going to be music. What we're talking about really is how people get paid to make music. I think people should get paid to make music. The way it used to work is that you made all your money on the front end. And so you would sell the record and that would be your income. Now, musicians have to make their money on the back end, meaning that the record is almost a loss, or it's basically just going to break even on the amount of time that you put in. You're really not going to make much money on releasing music in the world. Instead, what's going to happen is you are going to have to make money on the back end by really closely engaging with the people that are really dedicated to you, and you're going to sell them shirts, and you're going to sell them whatever. You're going to go on tour, and you're going to make your money there. It's not good or bad, it's just different. And in a lot of ways, it's inevitable. The fact that it's so easy to make and record music means there's a lot more music, which means people listen to a lot more music, which means there's a lot of supply, and so the demand is lower. And when supply goes up and demand goes down, prices drop. This is just the way it is. So I don't think of it as good or bad. It's simply economics. It just means that the reality of making music is different. You know, the downside is that if you're a really big band, you're not making the money you used to. The upside is that a band like Have a Nice Life or Black Wing can actually make some money. Not a lot of money, not enough money to really live on or whatever, but I can actually put money out, or put music out, have people listen to it, and make some money back. And that would never have been possible. Black Wing would not have been a thing 15 years ago. It is what it is. It's not good or bad, it simply is what it is. And I personally, it makes me excited. I would much rather be making music today than making music 15 years ago. Although I was making music 15 years ago, and that was pretty fun. What are your biggest heroes? What are my heroes? You know, it's interesting because I was thinking about this recently. I don't really have, I don't really think about it that way. I don't really have heroes of people that I really look up to, and I'm not saying that to be like, I'm so cool. I don't look up to anybody. That's not what I'm saying. I just literally couldn't really think of anyone. There's people in business that I really look to and respect, but they're not really my hero in the sense that I want to be like them. You know, if I had to pick someone, probably the closest person would be my grandmother, who, my family, mom's side of the family is French-Canadian, so we call her Meme. So my Meme is an incredibly strong-willed person. She has a very deep religious faith, which obviously I don't share at all, but she acts on that faith in a way that very few people do. She went to Africa to join the Peace Corps when she was in her 70s. She spent 4 years there. She was bitten by a cobra. She is dedicated to doing good in the world in a way that is actually consistent with the things that she believes, which so many people don't. And I don't just mean religion. Most people do not act consistently with what they say they believe. I find that incredibly moving, and she's just the most caring person. For me, she's someone that I really look up to. Beyond that, I don't really have, I think I just have a bad memory, so I can't remember who I like. But even people like musical people that really influence me, you know, people like Ian Curtis and stuff like that. I don't want to be like him. That's a sort of a weird question for me, and I don't know totally how to answer it. I'm sure I have heroes, I just can't think of any. What are some bands that you think deserve more recognition and appreciation today? That is really interesting too, because I don't really know how much recognition bands get. Obviously, I think all the bands that are on Enemy's list are awesome. I think, you know, Planning for Burial is amazing and should be way bigger than he is. But I think he's actually doing pretty well. It's weird because I don't really read music reviews or music websites or anything. It's just not what I do with my time. It's not really what I'm interested in. And so I legitimately have no idea how big things are. I don't know how many people know who I am. I have no idea. I don't have any idea how many people listen to Playing for Burial. I've got literally no idea. And so it's a little hard for me to say I wish people got more recognition. I think that, Playing for Burial is great. And there's just so many bands, and so the way I find music now is I just kind of listen to Spotify, and I'm kind of bouncing around from person to person. I have no idea how big they are. I do think, that's how I feel. I don't really know who likes who anymore. I blame that on the fact that I'm very old. So there you go. Maybe some poor answers to your last two questions, but I hope this was useful in some way, and I appreciate you very much doing the interview. It was really cool. Please don't judge me by how messy the background is. I just moved here. So yeah, hopefully you guys like Black Wing and you dig it. I really enjoyed making it, so I hope you enjoy listening to it. All right, thanks a lot, guys. Bye-bye.